We think we are so modern. We carry supercomputers in our pockets. We send robots to other planets. We understand the germ theory of disease and the vastness of the cosmos. Yet, how many of us have ever felt a small knot of anxiety after a black cat crossed our path? How many have muttered knock on wood after saying something hopeful? A 2014 poll found that 13% of Americans are superstitious about black cats, and 9% are wary of walking under ladders. These are whispers from a distant past, a time of plague, famine, and unexplained phenomena. A time when a failed crop was not a matter of soil pH, but a curse. When a sudden illness was not a virus, but a malevolent spirit. These medieval superstitions seem foolish to us now. They are the relics of an unenlightened age. Or are they? What if these strange beliefs were not just random fears, but clever packages of practical wisdom? What if they were early, imperfect attempts at public health, psychology, and social cohesion, wrapped in the only language that could make them stick fear and folklore? Could it be that the advice to throw salt over your shoulder was really about resource management? That fearing a broken mirror was a lesson in the value of self-reflection? And that blessing a sneeze was an ancient form of social bonding in the face of our own fragility? We are about to look at some of these old fears, not to mock them, but to see the surprising and often brilliant advice they still hold for us today. Number 18, why was spilling salt a catastrophe? You have seen it in paintings. You have probably done it yourself. A shaker of salt tips over, and a white drift spreads across the table. Immediately, someone pinches a bit and tosses it over their left shoulder. The act is automatic, a muscle memory from a belief we do not even hold. It is to ward off the devil, who is said to be lurking there, waiting for an opportunity. The salt in the eye will blind him. It feels silly, but the intense fear behind spilling salt in the medieval period was not silly at all. It was deeply practical. The superstition was just a memorable warning for a critical piece of advice: do not waste what keeps you alive. Salt was not just a condiment, it was life. Before refrigeration, preserving food was one of the most important technologies a society could possess. It meant the difference between surviving the winter and starving. It meant a fisherman's catch could be sold inland. It meant a slaughtered pig could feed a family for months, not days. And the primary method for this preservation was salt. Curing meat, pickling vegetables, salting fish, all of it required huge quantities of this mineral. It was, in a very real sense, white gold. The word salary itself comes from the Latin salarium, which was the payment given to Roman soldiers to buy salt. In some parts of the world, salt cakes were used as currency. It was a strategic resource as vital as oil is today. Wars were fought over salt mines like the ones in Halle, Germany, which were a source of immense wealth and power from the Middle Ages onward. So, when you spilled salt, you were not just making a mess, you were wasting a valuable, sometimes scarce, resource. You were spilling money, you were spilling the food security of your family. It was a careless act with serious consequences. The superstition attached a supernatural penalty to a very real economic blunder. The devil on your shoulder was a powerful metaphor for the real-world consequences of your carelessness. He represented the hunger and hardship that could follow from such waste. The ritual of throwing a pinch over your shoulder is also clever. It reinforces the value of the substance. You must use a little more of it to atone for your mistake, making you even more conscious of its cost. This wisdom is more relevant today than ever. We live in an age of staggering waste. According to United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, roughly 1/3 of the food produced in the world for human consumption every year, approximately 1.3 billion tons of dollars, gets lost or wasted. In developed countries, we do not spill salt from a salt cellar, we throw out entire meals. We buy vegetables that wilt in the fridge. We discard leftovers. The superstition about spilling salt was an early, effective form of behavioral economics. It used fear and ritual to create a powerful incentive to be mindful. It taught conservation. It instilled a deep-seated respect for a vital resource. Today, we try to achieve the same result with data, awareness campaigns, and recycling programs. But perhaps we have lost the visceral, emotional punch of the old ways. The fear of a devil on your shoulder is a more potent motivator than a statistic about landfill volume. The superstition transformed a simple act of clumsiness into a moral failing, reinforcing a level of mindfulness that we struggle to replicate. It was a lesson in valuing the mundane, the everyday things that sustain us, a lesson we are still trying to relearn. What if the superstition was not just about the value of salt, but a warning against any small act of carelessness that could lead to ruin? How many modern disasters, from financial crashes to environmental damage, started with one person spilling the salt? If our ancestors could encode vital economic advice into folklore, what crucial wisdom are we failing to pass on to future generations in a memorable way? And what vital, life-sustaining resource are we currently spilling every single day without a second thought, because we do not have a devil on our shoulder to warn us? Number 17. Should you be afraid of an empty rocking chair? There is something inherently unsettling about an empty rocking chair moving on its own. It is a staple of horror movies, a gentle, rhythmic creak in a silent house. The chair moves as if occupied by an unseen guest. The old superstition says you must not rock an empty rocking chair. To do so is to invite spirits, or even death, into your home. It creates a space for the malevolent or the lost to sit and stay. In some parts of Appalachia, the belief was that rocking an empty chair would bring on a serious illness for someone in the family. Yeah, it was a bad omen, a disturbance of the peace. Like many superstitions, it seems on the surface to be a simple fear of the supernatural. But beneath it lies a profound psychological insight about presence, grief, and the danger of dwelling on absence. A rocking chair is a deeply personal object. It is associated with comfort, with rest, with the beginning and end of life. It is the chair where a mother rocks her baby to sleep. It is the chair where an old person sits to watch the world go by. Its motion is soothing, repetitive, almost like a heartbeat or breathing. It is a piece of furniture imbued with human presence. When it is empty, that absence is felt more keenly than with any other piece of furniture. A still, empty chair is just an object. A moving, empty chair is a ghost. It is a physical manifestation of loss. The advice hidden in the superstition is this: do not actively cultivate emptiness. Do not dwell on loss, to the point that it becomes a living presence in your home. Rocking an empty chair is a physical act of focusing on who is not there. It is a ritual of absence. For a grieving widow, rocking her late husband's empty chair is a way to feel close to him, but it is also a way to remain stuck in the past to prevent herself from moving forward. The superstition serves as a stark, memorable warning against the dangers of unhealthy grieving and melancholy. In a time before modern psychiatry, it was a piece of folk psychology. It told people, in the language of spirits and omens, to engage with the living, not the dead. This connects directly to modern therapeutic concepts. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, in her groundbreaking 1969 book on death and dying, outlined the 5 stages of grief. While her model has been debated and refined, the core idea that grief is a process that needs to be moved through remains central to psychology. The superstition about the rocking chair can be seen as a primitive tool to help people avoid getting stuck in the depression or bargaining stages. It externalizes the danger. The problem is not your internal state of mind, which is abstract and hard to fight. The problem is a spirit you invited in, which is a more concrete enemy you can take action against by simply stopping the rocking. Furthermore, the superstition promotes mindfulness and being present. The gentle, repetitive motion of a rocking chair can be hypnotic, leading to a state of reverie or dissociation. If your mind is dwelling on negative or sad thoughts, this can become a downward spiral. The advice to not rock an empty chair is, in a way, advice to not engage in mindless, repetitive behaviors that reinforce negative mental states. It is a call to be present in your current reality, to fill your home and your life with the living, not with the ghosts of what is gone. It is a warning that if you make a space for sadness, sadness will come and sit in it. So, if this simple folk belief contains such sophisticated psychological advice, what other hauntings are actually just metaphors for mental health states we do not understand? Could the concept of a cursed object be an early way of understanding trauma triggers objects that provoke a powerful negative emotional response due to past associations? How does our modern world, with its digital ghosts in the form of social media profiles of the deceased, create new kinds of empty rocking chairs that we are constantly mindlessly rocking with our thumbs? And are we less equipped to deal with them because we have dismissed the old warnings as mere superstition? Number 16, what are you really doing when you knock on wood? The gesture is almost a reflex. You say something hopeful, something that tempts fate. I have been healthy all winter. This business deal looks like it is going to close. Then, without thinking, you reach out and wrap your knuckles on a wooden table, a door frame, a tree. Knock on wood. It is a small ritual to ward off bad luck, to prevent the universe from hearing your hubris and punishing you for it. The origins are murky, lost in the forests of pre-Christian Europe. Some theories suggest it came from pagan beliefs that spirits, or dryads, lived in trees. Knocking on a tree was a way to either ask the benevolent spirit for a blessing, or to distract a malevolent one from hearing your good fortune. Later, the tradition was absorbed into Christianity, with the wood being reinterpreted as the wood of the cross, a way of invoking Christ's protection. But what is actually happening in our brains when we perform this tiny ritual? Is it just a meaningless habit, or does it serve a real psychological purpose? The superstition is a surprisingly effective tool for managing the anxiety that comes with hope. It is a way of dealing with a cognitive bias known as tempting fate. This is the irrational feeling that by acknowledging good fortune, you are somehow increasing the likelihood that it will be taken away. Jane Reason, a behavioral scientist at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, has studied this phenomenon. Her research suggests that people who engage in these magical rituals, like knocking on wood, are not necessarily irrational. They are often perfectly aware that the action has no real effect on the outcome. However, the action itself helps to quiet the anxiety. When you voice a positive outcome that is not yet certain, you create a mental simulation of a negative alternative. Saying, "I think I am going to get the job," immediately brings to mind the possibility of not getting the job. This creates a moment of psychological tension. The act of knocking on wood serves as a non-verbal undo button. It is a physical act that counteracts the negative thought you just conjured. It provides a sense of closure, a feeling of having done something, however symbolic, to protect yourself. It lowers the psychological stakes of being hopeful. In essence, the superstition gives us permission to be optimistic without feeling so vulnerable. This is a form of what psychologists call coping rituals, or anxiety-reducing behaviors. You think of an athlete who wears the same pair of lucky socks for every game, or a student who uses the same pen for every exam. These actions do not change reality, but they change the person's mental state. They provide a sense of control in an uncontrollable situation. They reduce cognitive load by making the world feel a little less random. The superstition of knocking on wood is a democratized version of this. It is a simple, accessible ritual for anyone who feels a flicker of fear after a moment of hope. A 2013 study published in the journal Psychological Science found that rituals, even seemingly arbitrary ones, can have a powerful effect on performance and emotional regulation, particularly after a loss or a high-stakes event. The advice embedded in this superstition is not about appeasing tree spirits. It is about managing your own mind. It acknowledges that the human psyche is not always rational. We have anxieties, fears of jinxing ourselves, and a deep-seated discomfort with uncertainty. The superstition does not fight this. It works with it. It provides a small physical and harmless outlet for that anxiety. It is a psychological pressure valve. In our modern world, filled with more uncertainty than ever about our jobs, our health, our planet, this ancient piece of advice is a reminder that sometimes the most effective solutions are not the most logical ones. Sometimes what we need is not more data, but a simple grounding ritual. Is the modern trend of manifesting or positive affirmations just a new, more elaborate version of knocking on wood, an attempt to ritually influence an uncertain future? If a simple physical act can measurably reduce anxiety, what other ancient rituals have we discarded that might have tangible psychological benefits? Could the rise in anxiety disorders be partially linked to our dismissal of these small communal coping mechanisms that once helped our ancestors navigate a world far more uncertain than our own? And what happens when our wood to knock on our grounding in the physical world is replaced by the smooth, intangible glass of a screen? Number 15, why should you cover your mouth? When you yawn. Every child is taught this. As a yawn begins to form, a hand should come up to cover the mouth. It is considered polite. To yawn openly is seen as rude, a sign of boredom or poor manners. But this social grace has its roots in a much deeper, more primal fear. In medieval times, and even earlier, a yawn was seen as a moment of profound vulnerability. The mouth was a gateway not just to the body, but to the soul. A deep open-mouthed yawn was an invitation for evil spirits or demons to enter your body and take possession of you. Conversely, it was also feared that your own soul might take the opportunity to escape, leaving you an empty vessel. The act of covering your mouth was a physical shield, a desperate measure to keep your spirit in and the demons out. This sounds like pure fantasy, but like so many superstitions, it encoded a piece of vital public health advice centuries before the science existed to explain it. The wisdom hidden here is simple. Cover your mouth to prevent the spread of disease. Yawn is a deep inhalation followed by a forceful exhalation. This process can aerosolize droplets of saliva and mucus, sending them several feet into the air. If the yawning person is carrying a respiratory illness, a cold, the flu, or something far more deadly like tuberculosis or the plague, those airborne droplets become vehicles for pathogens. In the close, often unsanitary, living conditions of the medieval period, a single uncovered yawn could be the starting point of a local outbreak. On the Black Death, which peaked in Europe between 1347 and 1351, was a terrifying and mysterious killer, wiping out an estimated 30 to 50% of the continent's population. People did not understand the Yersinia pestis bacterium or the fleas that carried it. They saw disease as a miasma, a bad air, or a punishment from God. In this context of overwhelming, invisible death, any advice that might offer a sliver of protection was clung to. The superstition about spirits entering the body during a yawn was a perfect delivery mechanism for a crucial piece of hygiene advice. It was memorable, it was frightening, and it required a simple, easy-to-follow action. It did not matter if people were covering their mouths to stop demons or to stop germs. The result was the same: a reduction in the spread of airborne pathogens. This is a stunning example of a prescientific public health directive. Long before Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch developed the germ theory of disease in the latter half of the 19th century, this superstition was effectively teaching people the basics of droplet precautions. It operated on the same principle as the advice to cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze, which we now know is one of the most effective ways to prevent the spread of viruses. The superstition was a myth, but the behavior it enforced was medically sound. It created a social norm that had a real positive impact on community health, even if the reason for it was completely wrong. We saw this same principle play out on a global scale during the COVID-19 pandemic. Public health officials urged people to wear masks, a modern, more effective version of covering your mouth. The goal was to block the aerosolized particles that carry the virus. The resistance to this advice in some quarters showed how difficult it can be to get people to adopt a new public health behavior, even with clear scientific evidence. The medieval superstition had an advantage. It did not need to persuade people with data. It compelled them with fear of a supernatural threat that was, in its own way, just as real to them as a virus is to us. The advice was not just to protect others, but to protect yourself from a spiritual invasion, making compliance a matter of personal survival. Given the effectiveness of this superstition, what other folk remedies or old wives' tales might contain legitimate medical wisdom that we have dismissed? How many other social niceties and rules of etiquette originated as life-saving public health measures in a world without science? If a culture could stumble upon a correct medical practice for the wrong reasons, does it suggest an intuitive evolutionary drive towards behaviors that promote group survival? And in our age of scientific literacy, why do we still find it so hard to follow simple, life-saving advice, while our ancestors followed it out of a fear of ghosts? Number 14 is a black cat, really a bad omen. It is one of the most enduring superstitions. A black cat crosses your path. A shiver of bad luck runs down your spine. The association of black cats with evil is deeply embedded in Western folklore. In the Middle Ages, they became linked with witches. The belief was that witches could shapeshift into black cats to prowl the streets at night, unseen, to cast their spells. A black cat was not just an animal. It could be a witch's familiar, a demonic entity in animal form. This fear reached a fever pitch during the height of the witch hunts in Europe. To own a black cat, especially if you're an old single woman, could be a death sentence. Pope Gregory IX, in his 1233 papal bull, Vox in Rama, even declared black cats to be an incarnation of Satan. This led to the widespread killing of cats, an act which some historians have ironically suggested may have worsened the Black Death by allowing the rat population to explode. This all seems like a tragic case of animal cruelty born from paranoia. But what if the superstition was not really about the cat itself? What if it was a warning about something else entirely? The hidden advice is this: be cautious of the unseen and pay attention to your surroundings, especially at night. A black cat is, by its very nature, a creature of stealth and camouflage in the darkness. In a medieval town or village with no streetlights, the night was a profoundly dangerous place. And roads were uneven. Robbers and other dangers lurked in the shadows. A black cat darting across your path was a sudden, unexpected movement in the dark. It was a jolt to the nervous system. It was a sign that you were not alone. The cat itself was not the danger. The cat was the alarm. Its sudden appearance forced you to stop, to become fully alert, to scan your surroundings. The superstition attached a sense of supernatural dread to this moment, amplifying its effect. When a black cat crossed your path, you did not just see an animal, you felt a premonition of doom. This heightened state of alert would make you more cautious as you continued on your way. You would walk more slowly, listen more carefully, and be more prepared for any real danger that might be waiting. The cat was a trigger for a state of hypervigilance, a useful survival mechanism in a perilous environment. This idea is supported by our understanding of evolutionary psychology. Humans are wired to notice anomalies and react to unexpected stimuli. Our ancestors, who were better at spotting a predator in the periphery, were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. The black cat superstition taps directly into this survival instinct. It takes a common but startling event, a dark shape moving quickly at the edge of your vision, and attaches a powerful narrative to it. The narrative bad luck ensures that you do not dismiss the event. Instead, you react to it, and that reaction, increased caution, is what provides the benefit. Think of it as a form of biological risk management. The world is full of random events. Most are meaningless. Some are signs of danger. A belief system that treats all startling, unexpected events as potential omens is, from a survival standpoint, safer than one that ignores them. It creates a lot of false positives. The cat was just a cat, but it avoids the false negative that could get you killed, ignoring the rustle in the bushes that turns out to be a wolf. The black cat superstition was a simple, effective heuristic for better safe than sorry. If this is true, then what are our modern black cats? Are they the unexpected news alerts on our phones, the sudden dips in the stock market, the strange email in our inbox? Do these things trigger a similar, albeit updated, sense of unease that forces us to become more alert? Have we replaced a fear of witches and demons with a fear of hackers and economic collapse, using digital omens to guide our caution? And in a world brightly lit and seemingly safe, have we lost our ability to heed the subtle alarms our environment gives us, making us more vulnerable, not less? Number 13, why? Does a broken mirror mean 7 years of bad luck? The fear is visceral. The sound of shattering glass, followed by the sight of your own fractured reflection. Breaking a mirror is one of the most feared superstitions, promising a full 7 years of bad luck. The belief is ancient, predating glass mirrors themselves. Early humans saw their reflections in pools of water and believed they were looking at their actual soul. To disturb the water was to disturb your soul. The Romans, who were skilled at making primitive mirrors from polished metal, added the 7-year clause. They believed that life renewed itself in 7-year cycles. A body and soul that were damaged would therefore take 7 years to fully heal. When expensive fragile glass mirrors became more common in Venice in the 15th century, the superstition likely gained a practical boost. A broken mirror was a significant financial loss, and the bad luck narrative was a powerful incentive for servants and children to handle them with extreme care. But the advice encoded within this fear runs deeper than just being careful with expensive objects. The hidden wisdom is about the importance of self-reflection and the danger of a shattered self-image. A mirror is the primary tool through which we construct our physical sense of self. It is where we confront our own identity. To see that image broken, splintered into a dozen distorted pieces, is a powerful and unsettling metaphor. The superstition warns that if you break your sense of self, it will take a long, long time to put it back together. This resonates strongly with modern psychology. Concepts like self-concept and self-esteem are central to mental health. And psychologists like Carl Rogers, a founder of the humanistic approach, emphasize the importance of a stable and coherent self-image. When a person's self-image is shattered by trauma, a major failure, or deep betrayal, the psychological consequences can be devastating and long-lasting. The recovery process is not quick. It can indeed feel like 7 long years of bad luck, as the person struggles with depression, anxiety, and a loss of identity. The superstition, in its folkloric way, is describing the arduous process of psychological healing. The number 7 is also significant. It is not just about the Roman belief in life cycles. It represents a long, substantial period of time. It communicates that the damage is not trivial. It is a warning against actions that could lead to a profound crisis of identity. This could include dishonesty, betraying one's own values, or living an inauthentic life. These actions break the mirror by creating a dissonance between who you are. The bad luck that follows is the natural consequence of this internal conflict, broken relationships, missed opportunities, and a constant state of inner turmoil. The advice then is twofold. First, be careful with how you see yourself. Protect your self-esteem. Do not allow others to define you or to shatter your confidence. Second, be authentic. Do not create a fractured identity by living a lie. The superstition externalizes this complex psychological advice into a simple, memorable event. It is easier to teach a child do not break a mirror than to explain the intricacies of maintaining a healthy self-concept. The fear of the curse does the pedagogical work. It is a powerful fable about the fragility of the self. In our modern age, what are our new mirrors? Social media profiles are a clear candidate. We curate and polish these digital reflections of ourselves. What happens when this carefully constructed image is shattered by public shaming, a hack, or a viral mistake? The psychological fallout can be immense, leading to a modern version of the 7-year curse. Does our obsession with these digital mirrors make our sense of self more fragile than ever? Have we forgotten that the reflection is not the soul, and in doing so, given the mirror more power over our well-being than our ancestors ever did? And if breaking a mirror is so bad, what is the psychological consequence of never truly looking in one at all? Number 12, why bless someone after they sneeze? It is a universal reflex in many cultures. Someone sneezes, and without a thought, we say, God bless you, Gesundheit, or salute. The sneezer, in turn, says, thank you. This simple exchange is so ingrained, it feels like a fundamental part of social interaction. Its origins are ancient and steeped in fear. One of the most common beliefs, dating back to at least the time of Pope Gregory the Great in the 6th century, was that a sneeze was the body's attempt to expel an evil spirit. The blessing was a way to protect the sneezer from the spirit trying to re-enter, or from other spirits taking advantage of the momentarily vacated body. Another popular belief was that the heart momentarily stopped during a sneeze, and the blessing was a prayer that it would start again. Some even believed the soul itself could be expelled from the body along with the sneeze, and the blessing was to prevent the devil from snatching it away. These beliefs revolve around a central idea. A sneeze is a moment of vulnerability, a brief loss of bodily control that opens a person up to external harm, whether spiritual or physical. And hidden within this supernatural fear is a profoundly important piece of social and public health advice. The wisdom is this: acknowledge the fragility of others and reinforce social bonds, especially in the face of illness. A sneeze is often one of the first overt symptoms of a respiratory infection. In an era before antibiotics, a simple cold could easily escalate into a fatal case of pneumonia. The bubonic plague, in its pneumonic form, could also be spread through sneezing and coughing. A sneeze was not just a sneeze, it was a potential death sentence, not just for the sneezer, but for everyone around them. The act of saying, God bless you, was a multi-layered response to this threat. On one level, it was a genuine prayer for the person's health, a plea for divine intervention in a world where medicine had little to offer. But on another, it was a crucial social signal. It was an act of turning towards the sick person, not away from them. It acknowledged their humanity and their plight. In a time of plague, the natural instinct is to shun the sick, to isolate them out of fear. This social ritual worked against that instinct. It forced a moment of connection and empathy. By blessing the sneezer, the community was reaffirming that the person was still a part of the group, still deserving of care and prayer. This act of social cohesion is a powerful survival tool. A 2010 meta-analysis of 148 studies published in PLOS Medicine found that individuals with stronger social relationships had a 50% increased likelihood of survival compared to those with weaker social relationships. The effect was comparable to quitting smoking and exceeded many other risk factors like obesity and physical inactivity. The simple reflexive act of blessing a sneeze is a micro interaction that strengthens the social fabric thread by thread. It is a constant low-level reminder that we are in this together. It costs nothing, but it pays dividends in social capital and mutual support. The German word Gesundheit, which simply means health, points to the more direct, practical root of the custom. It is a wish for good health. It is a way of saying, I see that you are showing a sign of potential illness, and I hope you remain well. It is an expression of concern. This shared vulnerability and the shared rituals we create around it are fundamental to what makes us human. The superstition about spirits and souls was the story we told ourselves, but the behavior it created, empathy, social bonding, and a shared awareness of health was the real magic. What other automatic social graces serve a deeper, forgotten purpose of strengthening community bonds in the face of shared threats? As our interactions become more digital and less personal, are we losing these small ritualized moments of empathy? And what is the cumulative effect on our collective social health? Could the simple act of acknowledging another person's sneeze be a more powerful tool for building a healthy society than we have ever realized? And what happens to a community when it stops blessing its sneezers and starts fearing them instead? Is number 11, why is garlic a vampire's worst enemy? The image is iconic. A string of garlic bulbs hanging on a door. A hero in a horror story chewing a raw clove to ward off the encroaching darkness. From Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1897 to modern vampire lore, garlic has been the ultimate repellent for the undead. This belief is much older than Stoker's novel, with roots in Eastern European folklore where garlic was used to ward off all manner of demons and evil spirits. It was hung in houses, rubbed on chimneys and keyholes, and even placed in the mouths of the dead to prevent them from turning into vampires. On the surface, it is a simple, if pungent, form of supernatural pest control. But the core wisdom behind this superstition is one of the most direct examples of folk medicine becoming legend. Garlic is a powerful, natural antibiotic, and its use was a form of primitive public health. Vampires in folklore are intrinsically linked to disease. They are walking corpses who spread their curse through a bite, draining the life from their victims, who then sicken and die, only to rise again. The myth of the vampire was likely a way for pre-scientific societies to explain the mysterious nature of contagious diseases. Outbreaks of illnesses like rabies or tuberculosis, which cause wasting, pallor, and coughing up blood, could easily be interpreted as the work of a supernatural predator. The vampire was a personification of the plague, a tangible monster to blame for an invisible threat. And if the vampire is a metaphor for disease, then the tool used to fight it should be a form of medicine. This is exactly what garlic is. For thousands of years, long before its association with vampires, garlic has been used as a medicinal plant. The ancient Egyptians fed it to the slaves building the pyramids to increase their strength and ward off illness. Hippocrates, the father of medicine in ancient Greece, prescribed garlic for respiratory problems and parasites. In the Middle Ages, it was used to treat everything from snake bites to the plague. The reason for its effectiveness lies in a sulfur compound called allicin. Allicin is produced when a garlic clove is crushed or chopped, and it has potent antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal properties. Modern scientific studies have confirmed this. Research published in journals like the Journal of Antimicrobial Chemotherapy has demonstrated allicin's effectiveness against a wide range of bacteria, including antibiotic-resistant strains like Nisa. So, the superstition 2, use garlic to ward off vampires, was, in reality, excellent medical advice. Use garlic to ward off disease. In a world without pharmaceuticals, it was one of the most effective prophylactic and therapeutic agents available. Hanging garlic in your home might not have repelled a literal demon, but the pungent aroma and the handling of it could have had a real, if small, effect on the microbiology of the environment. More importantly, consuming it regularly would have boosted the immune systems of the household members, making them less susceptible to the real-life vampires of infectious disease. The folklore was a brilliant mnemonic device. It is much easier to remember garlic stops the blood-sucking monster than it is to remember garlic contains a sulfur compound that inhibits bacterial growth. The story is simply better marketing for the medicine. The link between garlic and blood is also interesting. Vampires drink blood. Garlic, it turns out, is a natural blood thinner. It has been shown to have antiplatelet properties and can help to lower blood pressure and cholesterol. The folklore inadvertently connected garlic to the very system, the circulatory system, or that it can medically benefit. The superstition was not just a story, it was a carrier for a complex and surprisingly accurate set of medical instructions passed down through generations. If garlic's medicinal properties were so effective that they became enshrined in one of our most enduring myths, how many other magical herbs and plants from folklore have real potent medicinal value that modern science has yet to fully investigate? Could the legends of healing springs or enchanted forests be pointing to locations with unique geological or botanical properties that have tangible health benefits? Are we at risk of losing a vast pharmacopoeia of natural remedies because we have dismissed the stories that were created to preserve them? And as we face a future of increasing antibiotic resistance, might our salvation lie in revisiting the very superstitions we once ridiculed? Number 10. What is the harm in opening an umbrella indoors? It is a superstition many of us follow without even knowing why. You come in from the rain and you instinctively close your umbrella before crossing the threshold, or at the very least, you take it to a porch or mudroom to open it. Opening an umbrella indoors is said to bring bad luck. The misfortune is usually vague, a general sense of impending doom, or a specific financial loss. The origins of this belief are debated. Some trace it back to ancient Egypt, where umbrellas or parasols were used to shield nobility from the sun. To open one indoors, away from the rays of the sun god Ra, was seen as an insult to the deity. A more recent and plausible origin comes from 18th century London, when modern, metal-spoked umbrellas became common. These early umbrellas were clumsy, spring-loaded contraptions. Opening one suddenly in a confined space like a crowded hallway or a room full of fragile objects was genuinely hazardous. You could poke someone's eye out, knock over a candle, and start a fire, or break a vase. Here, the superstition is a thin veil over a very clear piece of practical advice: be mindful of your tools and your environment. The bad luck you would experience from opening an umbrella indoors was not supernatural, it was the direct physical consequence of a careless act. The superstition served as a simple, memorable safety rule. It is the same kind of logic that tells us not to juggle knives in the kitchen or run with scissors. By framing the warning in terms of luck, it becomes a universal principle rather than a specific instruction that might be ignored. It is not just you might break your mother's vase, it is you will anger the universe. The latter is a far more powerful deterrent. This speaks to a broader wisdom about spatial awareness and respect for shared spaces. An open umbrella demands a significant amount of personal space. To open it indoors is an encroachment on the space of others. It is an inconsiderate act. The superstition reinforces a basic tenet of social living: be aware of how your actions affect the people and the environment around you. This is a lesson in what sociologists call proxemics, the study of how people use space. The unspoken rules of personal space are critical for a functioning society, and the umbrella superstition is a quirky but effective way of teaching one of these rules. Furthermore, the superstition contains a lesson about purpose and context. An umbrella has a specific function to protect you from rain. It is designed for the outdoors. To use it indoors is to use it out of context, to misuse the tool. This can be extended metaphorically. The advice is to use the right tool for the right job in the right place. Do not bring your work problems home with you. Do not use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. The bad luck that follows from misusing a tool is simply the failure and frustration that comes from not respecting its intended purpose. The umbrella, in this sense, is a stand-in for any tool or behavior that is inappropriate for its setting. The belief also highlights the difference between the outside world and the inside world. The home is meant to be a sanctuary, a safe space protected from the storms of the outside. Bringing a tool for weathering storms with the umbrella and no into the sanctuary and opening it is a symbolic violation of that boundary. It is like wearing your muddy boots on the carpet. It suggests that you are bringing the chaos of the outside world into the place of order and rest. The superstition warns that this violation will have consequences, that it will disrupt the peace of the home. This is a psychological truth. When we fail to maintain a boundary between our stressful public lives and our private, restorative spaces, we invite bad luck in the form of burnout, anxiety, and relationship stress. So, is our modern habit of being constantly plugged in, bringing the storms of the digital world into every corner of our homes via our smartphones, the ultimate form of opening an umbrella indoors? What are the other unspoken safety rules that we follow as superstitions without realizing their practical origins? Could the feeling of things being out of place be a modern manifestation of the same instinct that warned our ancestors not to misuse their tools? And have we become so focused on convenience that we have forgotten the simple wisdom of context and place? Number 9, why would you fear an itchy palm? The superstition is oddly specific. An itchy left palm means you are about to lose money, while an itchy right palm means you are about to receive it. Or is it the other way around? The details vary by region, but the core idea remains an itch in the hand is a premonition of financial change. To capitalize on the incoming money, the right palm, you should rub it on a piece of wood, touch wood. To mitigate the loss of the left palm, you should also rub it on wood, which is said to seal the bad luck in. It seems like a classic example of magical thinking, linking a random bodily sensation to a complex life event. But what if the itch was not a prediction, but a symptom? The hidden advice is not about fortune telling, it is about paying attention to your body and its connection to your work and economic life. In the medieval and early modern world, the vast majority of people worked with their hands. They were farmers, blacksmiths, weavers, masons, and scribes. Their hands were their primary tools and their source of income. And itch in the palm was not just a random sensation, it could be an early sign of something very real and economically significant. It could be the beginning of a callus indicating hard, repetitive labor. It could be a sign of contact dermatitis from working with new materials like dyes or metals. It could be the first symptom of a skin condition like eczema or psoriasis, which could be exacerbated by manual work and could, in a severe form, threaten a person's ability to earn a living. The superstition in this light looks less like a prophecy and more like a diagnostic tool. An itchy palm prompted a person to stop and examine their hands. What am I working with? Is this a new substance? Am I overworking myself? The link to money was not magical, it was literal. The health of your hands was directly tied to your financial well-being. The superstition created a mental link. Itchy hand, you think about money. This is a form of embodied cognition, where bodily sensations influence thought processes. The physical feeling forced a moment of financial and physical self-assessment.
The advice to rub it on wood is also interesting. While framed as a magical act, the physical sensation of rubbing the itch on a rough surface could provide temporary relief and was a common sense response to the irritation.
This idea also connects to the concept of psychosomatic symptoms, where mental or emotional stress can manifest as physical sensations. Financial anxiety is a major source of stress. Could an itchy palm be a physical manifestation of this anxiety? Modern research has shown a clear link between stress and skin conditions. A 2018 study in the Archives of Dermatological Research confirmed that psychological stress can induce or worsen itching. So, when you were worried about paying a debt, losing money, you might literally develop an itchy left palm. Conversely, the anticipation and excitement of a new opportunity gaining money could also create a physiological response. The superstition was simply giving a name and a narrative to this mind-body connection. The distinction between the left and right hand is also significant in many cultures. The right hand was often the hand of action, of giving and receiving, of making oaths. The left hand was often seen as passive or even sinister. The Latin word for left is sinister. It is not a stretch to see how this cultural symbolism would map onto the superstition, with the active, good right hand associated with receiving money, and the passive by left hand with losing it. This made the diagnosis feel more specific and credible. If an itchy palm was an early warning system for occupational hazards and financial stress, what other bodily superstitions, like a twitching eye or ringing in the ears, are actually folk interpretations of real physiological or psychological signals we should be paying attention to? Have we, in our reliance on modern medicine, lost the ability to listen to the subtle language of our own bodies? Could a modern version of this superstition be, when your eye twitches, check your screen time, or when your back aches, check your bank account? And in a world where most work is done with keyboards, not calluses, what new physical symptoms are our bodies developing to warn us about the stresses of the digital economy? Number 8, why is it bad luck to put a hat on a bed? This is a superstition that still carries some weight today, especially in certain regions. Putting a hat on a bed is considered bad luck, with some versions of the belief saying it will lead to an argument in the house or even invite death. The rationale given is often that the bed is a private, intimate space, and a hat, which is an item of outdoor wear, violates that space. Another explanation is that evil spirits live in people's hair, and placing a hat on the bed gives them a chance to escape, and infest the clean linens, bringing misfortune to anyone who sleeps there. It seems like an overly dramatic reaction to a simple careless act, but like the fear of an opened umbrella indoors, this superstition is a brilliant piece of hygiene advice disguised as a warning about evil spirits. The hidden wisdom is straightforward. Do not bring filth from the outside world into the place where you sleep. A hat is worn on the head, in the hair. Throughout history, and especially in the less than sanitary conditions of the medieval and early modern periods, hair was a prime habitat for lice, fleas, and other pests. A person's hat would pick up not only these pests, but also dust, grime, and all manner of dirt from the streets and workplaces. The bed, on the other hand, was meant to be one of the cleanest places in the house. It was a place of rest and vulnerability. To take a dirty hat and place it on the clean sheets of a bed was to create a perfect vector for infestation and disease. A louse infestation was not just a minor annoyance, it could be a serious health risk. Body lice are known carriers of diseases like epidemic typhus, trench fever, and relapsing fever. These diseases have caused devastating epidemics throughout history, particularly in times of war and poverty. A simple, thoughtless act, like tossing a hat on a bed, could be the starting point for a household infestation, which could then lead to a serious illness. The superstition turned this practical hygiene rule into a dire warning of a supernatural threat. The evil spirits in the hair were a perfect metaphor for the invisible germs and pests that a hat could carry. The bad luck or death that the superstition promised was a very real possible outcome of the unhygienic act. This is another example of a prescientific public health directive that worked because it used fear and social pressure to enforce a behavior. It created a strong taboo around an action that was genuinely risky, even if people did not understand the exact mechanism of the risk. It is far more effective to say putting a hat on the bed invites death than to say there is a statistical probability that your hat may contain disease-carrying ectoparasites which could then colonize your bedding. The first is a memorable taboo, the second is a lecture that would be quickly forgotten. This principle extends to other items of outdoor clothing as well, like shoes. The superstition of never putting shoes on a table comes from the same hygienic root. Shoes walk through mud, animal waste, and all sorts of refuse. To place them on a surface where food is prepared or eaten is a recipe for contamination and disease. The superstition often linked shoes on a table to a death in the family, again escalating the potential consequence to ensure compliance. These beliefs created a mental germ theory long before actual germ theory existed. They divided the world into clean zones like beds and tables and dirty zones, everything outside the home, and created strict rules for not cross-contaminating them. In our modern sanitized world, do we still unconsciously follow these rules of clean and dirty zones, even if we have forgotten the original reasons? Why do we still feel a sense of unease or disgust when someone puts their shoes on a sofa or their backpack on the kitchen counter? Could the entire concept of home, as a sanctuary, be built on these ancient, hygiene-based superstitions that taught us to keep the dangerous outside world at bay? And as our lives become more mobile and the boundaries between spaces blur, are we losing this innate wisdom and exposing ourselves to new, modern forms of contamination, both literal and metaphorical? Number 7. Does a seventh son really have special powers? The folklore is widespread and powerful. The seventh son of a seventh son is born with special gifts. He is a natural healer, a seer, someone with the ability to cure diseases like scrofula, the king's evil, with a touch. In some traditions, he has supernatural luck or the ability to talk to animals. This belief was so strong in medieval Europe that such individuals could make a living as folk healers, their reputation preceding them. In countries like Argentina, the belief took a darker turn, with the seventh son thought to be a werewolf, a superstition that led to a 1920s law allowing the president to become the official godfather of any seventh son, a symbolic act of protection to ward off the curse. The idea seems like a pure flight of fantasy, a genetic lottery for magical abilities. But the wisdom it contains is not about magic. It is about the immense power of belief, expectation, and the placebo effect. The special powers of the seventh son were not inherent in his genes. They were conferred upon him by his culture. From the moment of his birth, he was treated as if he were special. His family, his village, everyone he met expected him to have extraordinary abilities. This created a powerful self-fulfilling prophecy. The boy grew up believing in his own powers, which gave him an air of confidence and authority that other healers lacked. His patients, in turn, came to him with an immense amount of hope and expectation. They were already primed to be healed. This psychological state is the perfect breeding ground for the placebo effect. The placebo effect is a well-documented phenomenon where a patient's belief in a treatment can cause real, measurable physiological changes, even if the treatment itself is inert. A 2010 analysis by researcher Ted Kapchuk at Harvard Medical School found that the placebo effect can be a powerful component of all medical treatment. The rituals of healing, the consultation, the confident healer, the application of a treatment can themselves trigger the body's own healing mechanisms. The seventh son was a master of this, not through deception, but through a shared cultural belief. When he laid his hands on a sick person, the patient's brain, flooded with hope and expectation, would release endorphins, natural painkillers, and other neurochemicals that could reduce symptoms and promote healing. The cure was not in the seventh son's hands, it was in the patient's head, unlocked by the healer's reputation. The superstition was, in effect, a system for creating and credentialing powerful placebo practitioners. It provided a clear, socially accepted reason for a person to be a healer and a clear reason for the community to believe in him. It solved a crucial problem for any medical system: trust. The patient's trust and belief in the healer is a critical component of the healing process. The seventh son label was a shortcut to establishing that trust. It was a brand, a seal of quality that guaranteed the practitioner's supposed innate ability. This also touches on the power of narrative. Humans are storytelling creatures. We understand the world through stories. The story of the magically gifted seventh son is a compelling one. It has an element of rarity, of destiny, of a chosen one. This narrative is, far more powerful than saying this person is a skilled herbalist who has completed a long apprenticeship. The story itself has healing power. It gives meaning to suffering and offers a clear path to hope. The superstition was not just identifying a healer, it was creating a hero for the community, a focal point for the collective hope for health and well-being. If the magic of the seventh son was really the focused power of collective belief, what are our modern equivalents? Our charismatic doctors, celebrity wellness gurus, or motivational speakers are new seventh sons, individuals whose power comes less from their specific techniques and more from the immense belief we invest in them. Have we replaced the superstition of birth order with the superstition of scientific credentials, sometimes following advice blindly because of who said it, not what was said? And in a world that demands evidence-based medicine, how do we ethically and effectively harness the undeniable power of the placebo effect, the magic that our ancestors understood so well? Number 6, what happens if you step on a crack? Step on a crack, break your mother's back. It is one of the first rhymes and superstitions many children learn. It turns a simple walk down the sidewalk into a high-stakes game of precision and avoidance. The consequence is so dire and so specific that it lodges itself in the mind. The origins of the rhyme are unclear, likely dating to the late 19th or early 20th century. Some historians connect the fear of lines and cracks to older, more general superstitions about them being portals for spirits from the underworld. To step on a crack was to open yourself up to their influence. The addition of the rhyming threat against one's mother made the superstition incredibly effective at controlling the behavior of children. But behind this childish game and its dark threat lies a fundamental lesson in a skill we all need: mindfulness. The hidden advice of this superstition is simple and profound. Pay attention to where you are going. It is a command to be present in your physical environment. The game forces a child to stop thinking about 100 other things and focus on the single, immediate task of placing their feet. They have to scan the ground ahead, judge distances, and adjust their stride. This is, in its most basic form, a mindfulness exercise. It is about connecting your mind to the movement of your body in the present moment. The abad luck is a penalty for a lapse in attention. In a practical sense, this is excellent safety advice. Sidewalks and roads, especially in the past, were not always well maintained. A crack could be the edge of an uneven paver, a pothole, or a loose stone. To step on it could easily lead to a trip, a twisted ankle, or a fall. The superstition taught children to be vigilant and to navigate their environment with care. It trained their eyes and their bodies to work together. The dramatic, nonsensical consequence, break your mother's back, was just a clever way to make the lesson stick. The emotional weight of harming a loved one is far more motivating than the abstract possibility of tripping. This also connects to a deeper psychological level of order versus chaos. The paved sidewalk represents order, human control over the environment. The cracks represent the slow, inevitable return of chaos, the forces of nature breaking through our carefully constructed world. The superstition teaches a respect for this boundary. It suggests that by mindlessly stepping on the cracks, you are aligning yourself with the forces of disorder, and this will have negative consequences. It is a playful but powerful lesson in choosing order and deliberateness over chaos and carelessness. This form of magical thinking is also a common feature of childhood development and can be seen in some psychological conditions like obsessive compulsive disorder (OCD). The child creates a rule, I must not step on the cracks, and a belief that following this rule will prevent a terrible outcome. This provides a sense of control over a world that can feel big and unpredictable. While it can become pathological in the case of OCD in its mild, playful form, as with the sidewalk game, it can be a healthy way for a child to practice focus and self-regulation. The superstition gives the child a small, manageable way to feel powerful and effective in their world. In our modern world, we are constantly distracted. Our attention is pulled in a dozen different directions by notifications, advertisements, and the endless stream of information. We walk down the street staring at our phones, completely oblivious to the physical world around us. The simple, childish superstition of not stepping on cracks is a powerful antidote to this. It is a call to put down the phone, to look at the ground beneath our feet, to reconnect with the simple, physical act of walking. The advice is more relevant than ever. If this children's rhyme is such an effective tool for teaching mindfulness, what other games and rituals from childhood contain important psychological lessons we have forgotten as adults? Could we design modern superstitions to help us combat digital distractions, such as a notification checked mid-conversation brings a week of frustration? How much of the anxiety of modern life stems from our failure to mind the cracks, to pay attention to the small details and dangers in our immediate environment? And what happens to a society when its people forget how to simply watch where they are going? Number 5, why would you whistle in the house? Don't whistle indoors. You're whistling for the devil. This is an old superstition with many variations. In some traditions, whistling indoors summons ghosts or evil spirits. In others, particularly among sailors, it was believed to whistle up a storm, a fear so strong that it applied even on land. This Lithuanian folklore states that whistling indoors is forbidden because it will summon small devils who will then harass you. It seems like a strange and specific prohibition. What is so threatening about a cheerful whistle? The answer lies not in the supernatural, but in the social. The hidden advice is about respecting shared spaces, maintaining domestic peace, and the importance of quiet. In the small, often crowded homes of the past, a single person's noise could dominate the entire environment. A whistle is a particularly piercing and penetrating sound. Unlike singing or humming, which often have a softer quality, a whistle can cut through other noises and be difficult to ignore. For other members of the household who might be trying to concentrate, read, rest, or have a quiet conversation, a constant whistle could be intensely irritating and disruptive. The superstition provided a powerful social tool to regulate this behavior. It is much more effective and less confrontational to say you'll summon the devil than to say your constant whistling is driving me crazy. The supernatural threat depersonalizes the complaint and turns it into a universal rule that everyone must follow. This is a form of social regulation, a way for a community to enforce norms of considerate behavior without direct conflict. The devil, or evil spirits, are a metaphor for the real-world strife and annoyance that the whistling can cause. The superstition is essentially a noise ordinance for the home. It protects the peace and quiet of the domestic space, which is meant to be a refuge from the noise and chaos of the outside world. It acknowledges that auditory peace is a valuable and fragile resource that needs to be protected. The sailor's belief that whistling could whistle up a storm is also a fascinating example of this principle applied to a high-stakes environment. On a sailing ship, clear communication is a matter of life and death. The orders of the captain and the calls of the lookouts must be heard over the noise of the wind and waves. The ship's bosun used a specific coded whistle, a bosun's pipe, to give commands that could be heard across the deck. A sailor whistling idly could easily be mistaken for a command, or could obscure a real command, leading to a disastrous mistake. The superstition was a critical safety rule: do not create unnecessary noise that could interfere with vital communications. The storm was the very real chaos that would ensue if orders were missed or misinterpreted. This wisdom is profoundly relevant today. We live in a world of constant noise pollution. Open plan offices, a modern invention designed to foster collaboration, often become arenas of distraction where a single loud phone call can disrupt the concentration of dozens of people. At home, we are bombarded with noise from televisions, computers, and a multitude of electronic devices. The simple ancient advice to not whistle indoors is a reminder of the value of quiet and the importance of being considerate of the auditory space of others. It is a call for acoustic hygiene. If the fear of summoning demons was really a tool to enforce quiet and consideration, what other social rules are we failing to enforce because we lack a compelling superstition to back them up? In an office, is the person who plays music without headphones or takes loud personal calls the modern day Histler summoning a devil of distraction and resentment? Have we lost the ability to ask for quiet, and in doing so, have we made our homes and workplaces less peaceful and more stressful? And what does it say about our society that we needed to invent demons to get people to be a little more quiet? Number 4, what is so unlucky about walking under a ladder? This is perhaps the most practical and least superstitious superstition on the list. Everyone knows it is a bad idea to walk under a ladder. The reason seems obvious: the person on the ladder could drop a tool, a bucket of paint, or themselves right on your head. The ladder itself could be unstable and fall. It is a simple matter of safety and common sense. And yet, for centuries, we have layered a supernatural explanation on top of this practical one. The most common explanation is that a ladder leaning against a wall forms a triangle, and a triangle is a symbol of the Holy Trinity. To walk through the triangle is to desecrate a holy symbol, thereby inviting the devil's attention. Another theory suggests that it relates to the gallows, as prisoners had to walk under a ladder to be hanged. To do so voluntarily was to tempt their fate. The hidden advice is, of course, the obvious safety warning. But the interesting part is why this simple warning needed to be wrapped in a supernatural threat. The answer lies in human psychology. We are often not very good at assessing risk, especially for everyday activities. We get complacent. A worker on a ladder is a common sight. After seeing it 100 times with no incident, our brains start to code it as safe. We take shortcuts, we walk under the ladder because it is the quickest path. This is a cognitive bias known as normalcy bias, the tendency to believe that because something has not happened before, it will not happen in the future. The superstition is a powerful counteragent to this bias. It does not matter how many times you have safely walked under a ladder. The fear of violating the Holy Trinity or tempting the gallows is constant. It does not diminish with repetition. It attaches a fixed, supernatural penalty to the act, which short-circuits our brain's lazy risk assessment. It creates an absolute rule that is not open to interpretation or situational judgment. The rule is not walk under the ladder only if it looks safe. The rule is never walk under the ladder. This is a far more effective safety protocol, especially for teaching children or for situations where people are distracted. The superstition acts as a cognitive stop sign, forcing a moment of caution where our brains might otherwise take a dangerous shortcut. This principle of using a simple, absolute, and often superstitious rule to prevent a complex or low probability disaster is a form of what is called a heuristic. Heuristics are mental shortcuts that allow for quick, efficient decision making. The don't walk under a ladder rule is a brilliant safety heuristic. It prevents a wide range of potential accidents without requiring the person to do a detailed on-the-spot analysis of the ladder's stability, the worker's competence, and the trajectory of falling objects. The superstition makes the safe choice the easy, automatic choice. This can be seen in other areas of life. Think of the old laboratory rule, ever mouth pipette. In the early days of chemistry, scientists would use their mouths to suck liquids up into a pipette. It was quick and easy, but also incredibly dangerous, as it could lead to accidental ingestion of poisons. The absolute rule, drilled into every student, prevents this. The latter superstition functions in the same way. It is a piece of folk wisdom that creates an ingrained safety habit, passed down through generations. The story about the Trinity is just the memorable packaging that ensures the rule's survival. So, if this superstition is a highly effective safety heuristic, what other areas of our modern lives could benefit from similar, simple, absolute rules? Could we create superstitions around cybersecurity, like never click a link from an unknown saint, to prevent phishing scams? In an age of complex, often invisible risks from financial derivatives to algorithmic bias, do we need new, simple heuristics to help us navigate them safely? Have we become over-reliant on complex, data-driven risk analysis, and in doing so, lost the power of the simple, memorable, and often life-saving taboo? And how many modern accidents are caused by people taking a shortcut that their superstitious ancestors would have known to avoid? Number 3, should you cross your fingers for luck? The gesture is small and discreet. A friend is going into a job interview and you say, "I'll keep my fingers crossed for you." You are hoping for a good outcome in a situation you cannot control, so you press your middle finger over your index finger. It is a near universal sign for hope and a plea for good fortune. The origin of this superstition is believed to lie in early Christianity. Before the religion was officially accepted in the Roman Empire, Christians would use secret signs to identify each other. One of these may have been the crossing of fingers to form a rudimentary cross, or ichthys fish symbol. It was a way to invoke God's protection in a time of persecution. Later, in the Middle Ages, the gesture became a way to ward off evil or the plague. By forming a cross, a person was thought to create a sacred space that evil spirits could not penetrate. But what is the real effect of this small physical act? The hidden wisdom is not about invoking supernatural powers, it is about focusing intention, managing anxiety, and creating social solidarity. The advice is this: in moments of uncertainty, a simple physical ritual can be a powerful tool for psychological self-regulation and for signaling support to others. When you cross your fingers, you are performing a micro-ritual. This act helps to externalize your hope. It takes an abstract feeling, "I hope this goes well," and gives it a physical form. This can make the hope feel more real and potent. It is a way of doing something when there is nothing you can do. This can be profoundly comforting and can help to alleviate the stress and helplessness that comes with waiting for an uncertain outcome. This ties into the psychology of embodiment. The way we hold and move our bodies affects how we think and feel. A 2010 study by social psychologist Amy Cuddy showed that holding power poses could affect hormone levels and risk-taking behavior. While the specifics of that research have been debated, the broader principle that our physical state is linked to our mental state is well established. Crossing your fingers is a small but tangible physical act of clenching in focus. It can serve as a grounding technique, a way to bring your attention to a single point and to quiet the what-if scenarios running through your mind. It is a form of non-verbal self-soothing. The social aspect is perhaps even more important. When you tell someone, "I'll cross my fingers for you," you are communicating a powerful message of support. You are saying, "I am with you in this. I am investing my own hope in your success." This is a vital act of social bonding. It strengthens relationships and creates a sense of shared fate. For the person facing the challenge, knowing that others are crossing their fingers can be a significant psychological boost. It reduces the feeling of being alone and increases their sense of social support, which is a known buffer against stress. The gesture is a quiet promise of solidarity. Interestingly, another historical use for crossed fingers was to nullify a promise. If you made a promise with your fingers crossed behind your back, it was believed that the promise was not binding. This seems to contradict the good luck meaning, but it comes from the same root principle. The gesture is a way of mentally setting an intention that is different from your outward words or actions. In one case, the intention is hope. In the other, it is deception. Both uses show that the gesture was seen as a way to focus and direct one's inner will. In a secular scientific world, do we still need small rituals like this? The answer is almost certainly yes. We have not outgrown our need for hope, our anxiety in the face of uncertainty, or our deep-seated need for social support. The gesture of crossing fingers is a piece of brilliant, condensed psychological technology. It is a free, simple, and silent tool for managing our minds and strengthening our communities. How have our modern good luck rituals, like sending a thinking of you text or putting a like on a social media post, lost the physical, embodied power of crossing our fingers? If a simple gesture can focus intention and signal support, what other forms of body language have we forgotten that could improve our psychological well-being? And in a world that prizes action and control, is there a danger in forgetting the simple passive wisdom of just crossing our fingers and hoping for the best? Number 2 is a bird in the house, a sign of death. It is a deeply unsettling event. A bird, a creature of the open sky, somehow finds its way into the confined space of a house. It flutters in panic, crashing against windows, a frantic, feathered embodiment of something being terribly wrong. The superstition is ancient and widespread. A bird flying into a house is an omen, often of death or some other impending doom. In some versions, if the bird is a robin, it is a sign of a death in the family. If it is a dove, it can be a sign of peace or a new beginning, but the unexpected entry itself is always a significant event. This fear seems primal, a violation of the natural order of things. The hidden wisdom behind it is not about predicting the future, but about reading the present. A major disruption in the natural patterns of your environment is a sign that you should pay close attention. The advice is to heed the anomaly. A bird does not typically fly into a house. For it to do so, something must be wrong. The something wrong is not a future death, but a present vulnerability in the home. The most likely reason for a bird to get inside is an open door, a broken window, a hole in the roof, or a crumbling chimney. The bird is not the omen, it is the evidence. It is a messenger, not of death, but of a breach in your defenses. In a time when a secure home was the primary defense against weather, predators, and human intruders, a sign of such a breach was a very serious matter. The superstition took this practical warning and amplified it with the ultimate threat death rock to ensure it would never be ignored. Think of it as an environmental alarm system. Your home is a sealed system. The sudden appearance of a wild creature from the outside means there is a leak in that system. The bird is the equivalent of a smoke detector's beep or a security system's siren. It is an indicator that the boundary between the safe, controlled inside and the wild, unpredictable outside has been compromised. The homeowner who finds the bird is being given a critical piece of information. You are not as secure as you think you are. Find the hole. The fear of the omen would motivate a thorough search of the house, which would likely lead to the discovery and repair of the structural problem. The superstition, therefore, promoted good home maintenance and vigilance. This can be extended metaphorically. The house can be seen as your life, your family, or your community. The bird is an unexpected event, a crisis, or a piece of disruptive information that comes out of nowhere. The superstition advises that when such an anomaly occurs, you should not ignore it or treat it as a random, one-off event. Instead, you should see it as a symptom of an underlying issue. A sudden, uncharacteristic outburst from a child is not just a tantrum, it is a bird in the house that signals a deeper emotional problem. A sudden, sharp drop in a company's sales is not a blip. It is a bird in the house that indicates a fundamental problem with the product or the market. The advice is to investigate the root cause of the disruption, not just to deal with the immediate chaos of the fluttering bird. This way of thinking encourages a form of systemic awareness. It teaches you to look for patterns and to understand that a single, startling event is often connected to a larger, unseen vulnerability. It is the same logic used by detectives looking for a clue, by doctors diagnosing a disease, and by engineers troubleshooting a complex system. They all know that the small, strange anomaly is often the key to understanding the entire picture. The superstition simply encoded this sophisticated diagnostic principle into a memorable and frightening story. What are the birds in the house in our modern lives that we are trained to ignore? Are the constant stress-related illnesses, the rising rates of anxiety, or the increasing political polarization just isolated problems, or are they omens of a deeper systemic vulnerability in our society? Have we become so accustomed to chaos and disruption that we no longer recognize an anomaly when we see one? And if a bird in the house is a call to check your foundations, what should we do when the birds are everywhere? Or number one, what? If a sneeze really could let your soul escape. We have already blessed the sneezer, but let us return to the sneeze itself and the most primal fear associated with it, the escape of the soul. This belief, in various forms, is incredibly ancient and widespread. The Latin author Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century AD, mentions the practice of saluting a sneezer. The idea that a sneeze is a moment when the soul, the very essence of a person's life and consciousness, could be violently expelled from the body is a terrifying one. It frames a simple biological reflex as a moment of existential peril. This seems like the very definition of a primitive superstition, a profound misunderstanding of human biology. But what if the soul was a metaphor for something else? Something just as vital and just as easily lost? The ultimate wisdom hidden in this superstition may be a warning about the fragility of consciousness and the ease with which we can lose ourselves. The hidden advice is this: be vigilant against the things that can expel your soul, that is, the things that can cause you to lose your presence of mind, your self-awareness, and your connection to reality. A sneeze is an involuntary convulsive event. For a brief moment, you are not in control of your body. Your eyes close, your head jerks, and your awareness of the outside world is momentarily suspended. It is a micro seizure, a brief and total loss of composure. In this context, the soul is not a spiritual entity, but a symbol for your conscious, rational, present self. The superstition is a warning that there are forces and events that can, in an instant, eject this conscious self from the driver's seat. What are these forces? In the medieval world, there were many. A sudden, terrifying fright could make you jump out of your skin. A powerful blow to the head could knock you unconscious, literally sending your soul away for a time. A raging fever from a disease could induce delirium, a state where the soul is clearly not at home in the body. And of course, a strong passion like a fit of rage or a transport of ecstasy could make a person lose themselves. The sneeze was the most common and everyday example of this loss of self-control. The superstition surrounding it served as a constant daily reminder of how fragile our grip on our own consciousness really is. This is a profoundly modern and psychological insight. We speak of dissociation flow states and losing track of time. We know that our sense of self is not a stable, monolithic thing, but a delicate construction of the brain that can be easily disrupted. Trauma can cause a person to dissociate, to feel as though they are watching their own life from a distance, a classic case of the soul leaving the body. Addiction can hijack a person's will, making them a slave to a substance, their true self seemingly expelled. Even the immersive nature of modern technology, the endless scroll of a social media feed, can induce a trance-like state where hours pass in a blur and we wake up wondering where the time went. This is a modern form of soul expulsion. The superstition of the sneeze and the rituals around it, like the blessing, were a way for our ancestors to grapple with this fundamental aspect of the human condition. It was a way of acknowledging our own vulnerability. The blessing, God bless you, can be reinterpreted not just as a prayer for health, but as a wish for the person to come back to themselves, to quickly regain their composure and self-possession after the involuntary disruption of the sneeze. It is a way of saying, welcome back. We are glad your soul did not leave you. It is a ritual of regrounding. This ancient fear reminds us to value our consciousness, to cultivate our presence of mind, and to be wary of the things that threaten to take it from us. It tells us that our soul, our awareness, our reason, our selfhood is not a given. It is something that can be lost and something that must be protected. The sneeze is just a symbol, a stand-in for all the shocks, distractions, and passions that can knock us off our center. The superstition is a call to be mindful, to be present, and to hold on to ourselves. If the soul is our conscious self, what are the biggest threats to it in the 21st century? Is it the constant distraction of our devices, the overwhelming stress of modern life, or the polarizing rage of our politics? Have we created a world that is designed to sneeze our souls out of our bodies, to keep us in a constant state of distraction and reaction? And in an age without a shared belief in spirits or souls, what new language can we find to warn ourselves of the ancient, ever-present danger of losing our minds?